Good morning, everyone. I'm here with my friend Dutch, who this is actually our first time. Is it our first time meeting face to face, or did we meet once in PDTR somewhere?
We met once in PDTR. I think it was in Chicago, and
Oh,
I think
right.
we sat down together at a table and had lunch with a group of 6 or 7 of us.
You're right. That is right. Okay. Well, there was that one time in April of 2015 where we met.
All right, something like that.
I know it was April of 2015 because it was right before I moved to Denver.
Yeah.
Um,
And you had a reputation at that time. I remember being a little bit intimidating that the infamous Jamie Francis was going to be joining us.
That's so funny to hear.
No, you've got a fantastic reputation. I'm honored to speak with you today.
Yeah, and likewise. And we share a mutual client who sings your praises every time I see her.
Yeah, she's very fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
love working with her. And I think you were exactly the right person at the right time for her. And I love that about what we do is I've got some bases I can cover, but I can't cover all of them. And you cover some really significant territory that I just don't have the expertise to get into.
Yeah, likewise. There's a lot of things in the neuro world that I just have taken a different track.
Sure.
I was on that track for a little while, and I just took a right-hand turn for a little while.
But I think what you do is absolutely in that, and probably in the center of it. Really, some of the most important work is neuro, but it's dealing with people's emotions and pasts and fears and anguish, and I think that's such valuable territory to work in.
Yeah, it's a powerful place to be, helping people, and it was for me where I had to go, which is why I'm doing what I'm doing, is because I was in. Well, let me back up. So Dutch and I met through a technique called PDTR, which is a neurological form of body work, neurologically focused form of body work that is beautiful because it really covers a lot of different territories, much more than other modalities, in that it looks at emotions and meridians and organ work and reflexes and a lot of different things in it's a fairly complex system to learn, but once you kind of learn the rules and you get used to how to navigate in that system, it's not so horrible to apply it to these different areas of the body. And what I discovered when I was in that class was that I would have these different dysfunctions, if you want to call them dysfunctions, or patterns that weren't very helpful, and they would always return. Or they might return in a different way, but I could never get certain things to resolve completely. And so I needed to go deeper into the emotional piece in order to understand and heal completely.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Love
anyway, let's go back. Like, that's a whole different thing. Can you explain, or would you help whoever's watching to understand how you got into this business and how you became a body worker?
Sure. Of course, like you, I'm super passionate about this stuff. So just, tell me to shut up if I go too long or put on the brakes or say, no, I don't really go into that, Dutch. But I've got, my story is that I've basically experienced a lifetime of pain from my youngest of years that I can remember, literally from about 5 years old on. If you said, Dutch, what hurts, I could tell you, it's this elbow or it's this knee. There were phases where, that something would ache for 6 months or a year or a decade. But I thought that was normal. They say that a fish in water doesn't know that it's wet. And that was me. Yeah. I didn't realize that everyone didn't experience pain. And it wasn't a massive amount of pain. It was subtle. It was so subtle that no doctor could say you have this syndrome or this problem or this disease that keeps on giving you this minor stuff. So literally any minor thing you've heard of, I've pretty much had. So plantar fasciitis, shin splints, IT band pain, sciatic this, shoulder rotator that. The list just goes on and on. But very similar to your story, well, obviously I was super interested in all this stuff because I was experiencing it. And it was probably about the time I was 35. I was sitting with a group of friends and we were running together. And one person in particular was talking about her pain. And I realized I was super curious, and I was asking questions about her pain that nobody else was asking. And it started to occur to me, maybe I'm not experiencing pain quite like other people, or maybe I'm experiencing it, I just don't know what it is, but I need to look into this more. So I began to study and become certified in some techniques that were helpful to me. And those continue to open more and more doors. I met some fantastic therapists like you and other people who were saying, okay, this is really the thing that's up and coming. This is the new latest breakthrough. And I would go to these trainings to NKT, neurokinetic therapy, to PDTR, and I was meeting some of the best therapists in the world, chiropractors, physical therapists, hypnotherapists. And they were all like getting fed this diet of stuff that didn't exist in normal medicine, which was so weird and frustrating and powerful at the same time. So I started to learn all this stuff, and like you with PDTR, there were things that were wonderful, and I was feeling better at every kind of camp that I went to, but then stuff wasn't sticking, and it wasn't sticking as powerful as I needed it to. And for me, I was hearing this information about Z Health that became really important to me, because when there were, and I'm sure you're aware of, some of the modalities that begin treating our eyes in some kind of interesting ways, kind of weird ways. One modality where they were sticking a Q-tip in somebody's eye. And whenever somebody was getting hurt by these other modalities, some people were being helped by them, but a couple cases, I can think of 3 cases where I heard somebody was injured actually by one of these modalities. And when I was hearing of the injuries, they were going to Z Health to recover or to get their eyes fixed. So I went, there's something about that I need to find out. So I started to go to the Z Health avenue. And that worked out great for me because it began to answer so many questions. And in particular, at my first Z Health course, they started to talk about the ability to converge your eyes. And somebody made me do a pencil push-up, which is basically, look at this object, bring it into your nose as close, go cross-eyed basically.
Yep.
And the person who was my partner looked at me do it, and they just, I could see their expression. They weren't, it was a terrible bedside manner. They were like, when they looked in my eyes, right? It's like, what's wrong with you? Because I had one eye that I've learned was pretty significantly what's called exophoric. So my left eye would follow very nicely, and my right eye would just like go on vacation. and for me, when I started to understand the importance of our eyes and practice eye skills, man, that was a game changer for me. And as it turned out, going back in my history, everything began to unfold and make sense when I understood the importance of my eyes in particular. Now, eyes, of course, when we say they're important, people say, oh yeah, sure they are, but I can go into the science on this because it's so much fun. 75 billion-ish bits per data per second coming into the eyes. They're the single most important structure that your brain relies on to keep you safe. If they're not working correctly, they're implicated in so many problems. And for instance, in scoliosis, there's almost always an eye or vestibular dysfunction, vestibular being so closely associated with the eyes that they're almost inseparable. So if you have a spinal problem, spinal pain, usually there are eye drills that you should work on to get that to work better. But that all made tremendous sense to me, and I loved it because my eyes were so broken. And that's not the case with everyone. But in my case, it answered my questions. Why do my knees hurt? Why does my side hurt? So many of our body predicaments, I use an analogy to describe what I do as brain fuseology.
What?
Fuseology.
Okay.
Because just like if you go into your kitchen and you can't get the light to turn on and the toaster won't toast and the dishwasher's not working, you don't think, I've got to change my light bulb. Right? You think there's a main fuse. And for me, I think the brain science that I like to describe that way is most of our fuses are above the shoulders. So
Mm.
it's the cranial nerves, and it's training the cranial nerves. And so often the body aches and pains that are coming from other, you could say, extensions of the brain, that being our elbow or our knee, whatever. So often we have aches. I would say 50% of the time we have aches in those areas because of some kind of poor wiring in our fuse box, which may be the cranial nerves right here, at the brain stem. And if we get those to fire correctly, knee pain goes away, elbow pain is reduced. Suddenly the shoulder starts feeling better because the wires to the fuses are now getting activated in the way that they need to be.
Right.
So it's, anyway, long story short is I got into this because it started to fix me. And today, Jamie, I don't have any pain. I'm 54 years old. And for 2 solid years, I have been without pain. And that's crazy.
That is incredible. So when you turned 35 and you had this big shift in your focus, what were you doing before that? Were you working in the bodywork field or
No, I was in sales. I was selling telephone systems and I was doing I was a pretty aggressive athlete, an endurance athlete. So I was doing lots of century rides and the endurance sports were really attractive to me because, and again, this kind of led into the brain work because it's the only way I could stop my pain. Now, if I was on a 100-mile bike ride, when mile 50 hit, I'm not thinking about anything but just getting that pedal to go around the crank again, right? So I could live relatively pain-free for the next 50 miles. Mm-hmm. And then when I got off, pretty soon thereafter, the pain would lurk back. Yeah. But something about activating that intensity and that exercise and really activating in particular probably what's the ACC, the anterior cingulate cortex. Mm-hmm. That's the part of our brain that really fires up when we're engaged at a task and we have to keep fighting to achieve it. So when someone's taking a really long test, they've done tests on or research on students in college, and when they take a really long, hard test, at some point in that process, that ACC starts to fire up because it's the questioner, it's the fighter. It says, do I really need to finish this? But I think that's what was engaging in me that made me go, for whatever reason, when that activates, my pain kind of takes a way back seat.
Very interesting. Okay. So you went through, what was the first technique that you learned? I'm curious.
The first one was fascial stretch therapy.
With Stretch to Win?
Stretch to Win, yep. Yeah. Anne, I can't think of Anne's last name right now, but anyway, she's a wonderful practitioner and she's helped a lot of people. She works with professional athletes.
Yes.
And that's where I first kind of started. And it all just is so fun because I went to my second fascial stretch therapy course. And at that course, I saw some people doing some interesting things back on a table that obviously wasn't what we were learning in class. I went over and I asked them what was going on. And they were doing neurokinetic therapy. So I had to go get that.
So who was the first person you met in NKT?
I can't even remember now. I think one of the people that was actually doing NKT was Donna Thomson.
Yeah, Donna.
I'm not positive. Yeah.
Shout out, Donna.
Right?
So funny. Very cool. Huh. Okay. So what does a typical session look like for you now? Or how does it work when people come see you?
Yeah, they take on really different nuances. So people come to see me typically because they have some kind of pain in their body. Nobody else has been able to resolve. And they're either trying to improve as an athlete, they're trying to get some kind of performance back that they had, or they're trying to improve some level of performance. So we'll go to work. And the first part, of course, is listening to where they're coming from. It may be an emotional thing, right? What I try to listen through what we described in my modality as the 3 lenses of the body, those being your exteroception, interoception, and proprioception. So I try to figure out which one of those, if there's a problem with our body, usually it's because one of those lenses that the brain is looking through to see if you're safe or not isn't accurate. And it's what happens is something called sensory mismatch. And a way to think about that is, let's say your exteroception is your awareness of your environment. I'm in a room, I can sense the temperature, I can see I'm safe, it feels like a room, the floor feels flat, or it looks flat. That's my exteroception. My proprioception is going to be the sensation of my body, me knowing where I am without having to look at me. So I can feel the floor that it's flat. I know how I'm moving in the space. So I can have good exteroception. I can have good interoception. But what happens if or rather exteroception and proprioception, but what happens if my interoception is in sensory mismatch? Okay. And my guts or my stomach feel like I'm on a roller coaster, or my heart rate's pounding like I'm in a fight, but obviously I'm not.
Right.
So if I find that there's an interoceptive problem, I will go down that road and try to figure out what is it about the main three lenses that's the most off. If it's a proprioceptive problem, that can be pretty easy. We can just start to build better proprioceptive awareness around some joint that aches or some problem that's strictly related to your proprioception.
Yeah.
If it's exteroception, as it was with me, and all I've got to do is work on some eye stuff, and I feel a ton better. Yeah. But interoception is obviously a lot more tricky, and for some people, I'm going to send that person to you, because when I get to a certain level of, and there's an emotional block here that they're not letting go of, that's where it kind of extends beyond my ability. But I love finding that at the same time, because that's where some of our most powerful work can occur. Yeah.
Does Z Health have any tools for that?
A few, yeah. But they don't go into the depth nearly that you will go into. For instance, though, if I find I think interoception is a very interesting subject, because for a lot of reasons, I think that our brains are really vulnerable right now, not only because of COVID-19, but because of a lot of other things, basically not nourishing our brains the way they're supposed to be nourished. So I kind of have this little suspicions running in the background of the brain should be courageous. It should be strong. It should be resilient. It should be incredibly tough. It should be an incredible fighter. And if that's not the case, there's something very, very wrong. And I think I'm seeing that across the board as I see people interact with COVID-19 and threat that they're afraid of, or concerns in life. On one hand, I think it's really good to be careful, to be cautious, but whatever. I also think I'm missing this spirit of fight that humans should possess. I've discovered this in myself as my pain has kind of diminished. I've become more courageous. I've become more confident. And so I suspect that this interoception is much bigger and becoming much more important than virtually anything else.
Yeah. So, wow. You're right.
You'd ask what I might do for that. And there's a couple just shallow tools that I start talking to people about, but I would say 25% of the time, at least, I start to go into a conversation with people about this subject.
Yeah.
And so there's a tool that I love called iChill. It's actually been used with soldiers who struggle with PTSD.
Oh, yeah. It's like iRest or Yoga Nidra. Is that accurate? Okay.
I don't know about Yoga Nidra, so I can't really say that that's an accurate comparison.
Okay.
But it gives you some great ideas, and one of them is a resource. It talks about resourcing. And when I first started getting exposed to this, it was about 5 years ago. I was going through a really super stressful time in life. A lot of interoceptive challenges where I could see my world was safe. I could feel my joints move through my world pretty well, but my heart was rushing. I was having some nightmares at night. It was a really challenging season. And interoceptively, was probably where I was most off. So I was introduced to that app, and in the resourcing coaching, she asks you to build a concept, a person, place, thing, or animal, memory, smell, that means resilience for you. And for me, that's the word that I really camp on in this subject, is resilience. I don't necessarily, and this is a massive life change for me, because I used to think growing up that the purpose of life was to be happy. We had to become happy. And while I do want to be happy today, I understand that that's not what's going to get me through life on tough days. What's going to get me through life on tough days is being resilient. And so to build this construct of something that could remind me of that was powerful. And I really thought for probably about 10 days and really sort of meditate and try to figure out what's something that really comes to mind. And for me, I kept on being drawn to this image of an eagle on an old National Geographic. And it wasn't a pretty bird. He was beat up. His head was kind of cocked over his shoulder, looking back at the camera. He was muddy. And it just looked like this expression of, just go ahead and throw something else at me. I'll take anything you got.
Okay.
And that became just this powerful tool for me. And I could go there anytime I felt really bad. Was, okay, I gotta to get through this season. I'm not going to aim toward being happy. That's too far away. I'm going to aim toward just getting through the next 5 minutes. And that picture can help me.
Amazing. Yeah. How do you define resilience for your clients? Like, how do you help them understand what that means?
So it's a great question. There's a lot of ways that you can describe it. Think about going into the Super Bowl. If you're Tom Brady, for instance, you can't afford to lose sleep the night before, right? You are stressed, and life is stressful, but resilience is this place of thriving in spite of difficulty. It's being loving and kind and compassionate and aware and present and all these beautiful things, but it's I like how the iChill app has a kind of a ladder, and you can rate yourself on how resilient are you. Too high is going to be kind of buzzing in this spectrum of maybe having too much energy. You're maybe over caffeinated, right?
Yeah.
Too low is I'm too depressed. I can't even get up in the morning. And both of those are not ideal. But to be right in the center area of I'm resilient, I'm focused, I'm just, getting through the moments. And then when happiness happens, I'm ready for it. When sadness happens, I can go there. But I'm really focused on getting through this, being resilient. Yeah.
How do you build resilience for you when you're having a tough day? What do you do?
I think, well, there's the eagle. I've got a couple other constructs that work very, very well for me. So there's a few different things. On one perspective, it's the imagery and the mindfulness of where are you right now. But then there's brain hacks, right? So most of us are hyperventilators. We are overbreathers. We breathe too much oxygen. We breathe too shallowly. And that's hacking our brain the bad direction. So if we're sitting at a desk and we're breathing up into our upper chest, and that's all that we're doing, the back of our brain is going, I'm scared, right? Because that's how I breathe when I'm scared. So shallow, poor breathing is a negative brain hack. So if I can turn that around and go, I'm gonna take some steady, long breaths, that puts my brain, it changes my perspective from that sympathetic panic mode to a parasympathetic, I can afford to breathe. If I can afford to take nice, deep, relaxing breaths, I must be okay. Yeah. Right? So there's some really super brain hacks that are great for moving out of that not resilient place and getting your brain to go, oh, I'm okay.
Very cool. How often do you need to do these brain hacks for you?
Depends on the season. Right now, I'm doing well. But if I'm going through a tough time, you know, especially honestly, COVID-19 has not impacted me that negatively. And the things that impact me negatively are just like anyone else. They're when a loved one is hurting, right?
Yeah.
When a loved one is going through a tough time, that's what crushes me. I just hurt for them, and I want to be better. And that was what was happening about 5 years ago for me. And I was doing this kind of stuff literally about I mean, I was probably living and trying to get resilient all day long. It was such a important process. Unfortunately, I was just getting introduced to the modality that I'm doing today, and I was learning all these wonderful brain hacks. Mm-hmm. Another couple of the hacks that can be super useful are a snug Velcro waistband around your tummy, mm-hmm. because we've got this highway between the brain, in particular the interoceptive, what we call the insular cortex. Uh-huh. It's the what would be considered the fifth lobe of the brain. We used to think we had four, and this is more being talked about as the fifth lobe. The insular cortex is the house of our emotions. There's a highway that runs directly from that to our internal organs, which is why I think we can eat something wrong and feel depressed, or we can feel depressed and get a sore stomach. Mm-hmm. So there's this two-way highway. So often when we're emotionally distressed, that highway gets disrupted. Mm-hmm. It gets underactivated or overactivated, and by putting that band on, it's the same thing, same way that it helps a brain that loves to be covered under thick blankets or be in a super dark room. That band just has a way of settling, of up-regulating information flow from intestines, interoception to insular cortex.
Interesting. Okay. Does it work like a weighted blanket, or?
Sure, weighted blanket does the same thing. Some people really love that, but you can't work at your desk in a weighted blanket.
That's true.
So a $10 Velcro band from Amazon can be a
like
pretty
a weightlifter
sweet
belt.
fix. Not exactly. Those are too snug and pretty restrictive. So you basically want these. The bands are called waist trimmers. I don't think they actually do that at all. They don't make anyone's trimmer, but they're soft. They feel real comforting on your body, and they're only about $13 or $15.
Yeah, I'll try to look for one and put it in the Facebook post in case anybody wants to check that out.
Yeah. Some of the counselors I work with actually have that in their office. And if somebody's really, really distressed, they'll say, hey, you want to try this on?
Yeah.
And sometimes it works.
Really fascinating. I've never tried that on. I've certainly had the effect of tight pants on, though.
Yeah. And in a good way. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. It feels calming. It feels good.
Yeah. That's why I like to wear leggings all the time.
Sure. And I bet that's why a lot of people do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I did not make that connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very neat. Yeah. Lately I've been doing I'll wake up at 3 or 4 a.m. and I have this electric heating pad that I'll just put on my stomach.
Yeah. Beautiful.
For 5 minutes, and then I take it off and I'm able to sleep. And I wonder if it's having the same effect. It's not heavy, but the temperature seems to help me fall asleep again.
Beautiful.
Interesting.
Love it. Yeah.
Everybody who's anti-EMF is probably cringing right now, though. I'm putting a plugged-in thing on my belly when I'm sleeping. Oh my goodness.
Doesn't sound too bad to me.
No, it's not too bad. How about EMF? Is that something that you tend to test for, look for people who are more sensitive than others?
Not really. That's not something I tested. It's something I'm aware of. I have concerns about electromagnetic wavelengths and our exposure to them. Mm-hmm. And there's certainly people who are more vulnerable, who, you set them in front of a computer screen for 10 minutes and they feel like it's terrible for the rest of the day. Yep. So I do tune into that, and there's things that I can recommend to calm that stuff down. for instance, green glasses can be a wonderful fix for some people. So much of what I do, I just refer to as brain hacks, because remember, we're hacked the wrong direction because of habits, because of culture, because of life. So we need to unhack the brain by hacking back. So green glasses have been proven in a number of studies to help people with migraines, and 80% of studies with migraine sufferers. A green room or green light or green tinted glasses calms the brain. So that's a little bit of my work that I can go into in that arena.
Yeah. I tend to recommend grounding sheets and grounding pads and grounding in general.
Yeah, great. Yeah, what do you think about the 5G network? Is grounding going to be
enough
key for that?
I think so, just because I tend to believe that humanity is adaptable.
Yeah, good.
I'm not excited about it, but I know that we adapt quickly to things. Some of us struggle more than others, but I'm sure there's, like everything else, I always seem to be able to find something that helps to support people so they can manage.
Great.
And I know what I've observed within myself is that, just like you were speaking to, the more resilient I am in general, my body can handle a lot of things. It can handle a bad meal. It can handle a little virus. I haven't been sick in years, like 4 or 5 years, really, not anything. So
I love that perspective. Yeah, I love it.
I like to think that we have ways to adapt, and I'm not going to, go stand under a live 5G network cable thing and just hang out there, but I'm not really afraid of it either.
Excellent. That sounds good to me.
Yeah. I had this one lady who was very EMF sensitive, and I just told her about a couple of natural stones that do help block EMF. There's 3 of them that I know of. One of them is, sodalite, amazonite, and shungite all block EMF. So sodalite's a blue stone. Amazonite is like a light green stone, and shungite is a black stone. And this lady she'd been EMF sensitive for 20 years or something, whatever, forever, many, many years, her whole life. And she just put shungite in everything. She put it in the water that she drank. She put it all over her room, in her house, cured.
Wow.
Cured of this EMF sensitivity. Which she mostly attributed to the shungite water she would drink.
Wow.
Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Yeah.
That's awesome.
It is awesome. And there's this other company out of the UK. Have you heard of Quantum K? Have you ever heard of that modality?
I don't think so.
Quantum K is a kinesiology technique that uses numbers, sacred geometry, math, like the Fibonacci sequence, flowers, crystals, and they sell these little chips. You can see it kind of taped to my glass.
Oh, yeah.
For really cheap. And I found them to be very powerful EMF blockers. And they're nice because you know how you have those clients who love their Fitbits? And they don't want to give up their Fitbit but it doesn't work for them, doesn't work for their body. These things are nice and flat, so you can tape it to the back of the Fitbit. It doesn't disrupt the Fitbit at all, but it keeps them from being so affected by the electromagnetic signals.
Awesome.
Anyway.
I saw you had Brent Adamson a couple weeks ago. He's a great friend. But he convinced me to get this. I can't open up my phone right now, but I've got
thingy.
Yeah,
what is that?
It was very interesting because he did some muscle tests with me and found that my phone was very likely contributing to some lower back pain that I'd had at the time. So he said, "Dutch, try this." He basically took the phone away from me and watched me walk, and my gait was significantly better without a phone in my back left pocket.
Yeah.
And I love our work because we see stuff like this. And when was the last time, it's just in this, it gets me excited and agitated at the same time, right? It's like, why don't people's doctors watch them walk? Because it's such an indication of if your brain's happy or not.
Well, that's because everybody's shuffled into a room and the doctors are coming in, right? There's no opportunity to watch them walk unless maybe you're an orthopedic surgeon.
Yeah.
Like the hospital I used to work with kids, that was part of every exam, watching the kid walk, no matter what their condition was.
Wow.
So, but then that's because the interventions were a lot geared towards helping kids walk better. So otherwise, no. Well, this is fun. Okay.
Very much.
So you have something fun to teach us.
Yeah.
Would you like to start
So
that?
this is a brain hack. And let's see, Jamie, I wonder if this would be a good time. I can bring a picture into the screen that I think you would love. It's basically on the somatosensory cortex, and it's some of the real estate that's dedicated to things like our hands.
Okay.
Can I pull this into the screen for us?
Sure. Let me see if I can figure out.
I can do it.
Oh, you know how?
It should pop up right here. Yeah.
Okay, do it.
Can you see
that? Oh yeah, good job. Boy, you're amazing. I didn't know how to do that.
So this, if you look at this kind of slice of the pie of our brain, this is the motor cortex, so the thing that makes our bodies move, and the somatosensory is the slice right in front of that, and that's the thing that makes your body feel. Such as, warmth or sensation, vibration, all that stuff. But look at the size of the hands related to your knee or your toe. Your hands and your fingers take up a bizarre amount of brain space. Yep. I'm going to stop the share and throw another figure up here that I just love. This little figurine is on viewing at the London Museum of National Science, and I'll throw this up there. This is called a human homunculus. So can you see that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Again, a different descriptor, but the size of the hands. Check out how massive they are. Yep. So we find that sometimes we can do a really effective brain hack. And I do this with, I see at least a client once a week who will start moving their hands around, and they'll say things like, I just feel better. I feel calmer. I feel my body's moving better. It's more flexible. So basically, I have a couple of hand skills that I want to show you today.
Awesome.
And in particular, let's do finger piano playing. Do one hand at a time, right? So I'll stand up a little bit here so you can see exactly what's going on. Okay. And with my piano playing, I'm going to do a movement of my fingers and my wrist simultaneously. So from the index going down, my hand will go down at the same time as my fingers. So, and then when I'm down all the way like this, I'm going to curve my hand back up. So it's in a different angle now. I'm going to flick out finger by finger by finger. So there's a couple of things you want to notice there. Just keep on following my lead here if you can. And we want to note how well that works. If our hands are working really, really crummy, it can actually send a significant level of threat to our brain. Yep. Because they're so gigantic in that brain map. Let's lead with the pinky a couple times. So I'll work with people, and sometimes for some people it's so hard. Their pinky will start to move, then their thumb will start to move, and it's like their hand is unattached to their body. So you want to do that with both hands. Let's just check the other hand now. Let's see if it works as well or better. We'll do index leads the way. Try to move the hand, right? Back up, index leads the way. And let's do pinky leads the way a couple of times. Roll back up, pinky leads the way. For me, my right hand does not work quite as well as my left. Yeah. But it's better than it used to be. Yeah. Another exercise that I love to train people to do, and again, think of how important your hands are to your brain. If that image is remotely true of what I just put on the screen, then you want to exercise these daily. You can do it when you're driving at a stoplight. Let's do finger circles, individual finger circles, about 3 each direction. And you really want to make sure that those fingers, that each finger feels like a part of you and does what you tell it to do. I'll see some people who can't do a circle. It's like they do some kind of weird triangle instead. Yeah. But for those people who start to regain control of their fingers, control of their hands, it can create this incredibly calming effect.
Yeah.
And it goes right back to the idea of resilience that we've talked about, is sometimes we just need better grasp of how our hands work, and it can be a tremendous brain hack for resilience, because now my brain goes, oh, I know where my hands are. I know how they work.
That's super fun. Let's see here. We got piano playing and finger circles.
Individual finger circles. Go through all of them. Find one that works the worst. Work on it a lot. Get it to be better. And we have found things like this to improve strength, literal strength if you're in a gym. If you can get your hands to feel better, to work better, we often see an increase in strength of 10 to 15% in a specific exercise. Also, so I'm going to say one other thing about the hands and benefits from them. It'll come to me in a little while.
So interesting. I'm going to be doing this for hours.
Awesome.
Let's play with it. Teach it to my kids too.
Right? Yeah.
Do you get to work with a lot of kids, or not so much?
A few, yeah. So I love working with kids, and so I work with I've got probably 5 or 6 kids right now who I work with from all kinds of stuff. So literally, girls volleyball team. I've got a couple players I'm working with, and they're doing really great. One of them has an amazing response to the Velcro band around her waist.
Yeah.
She was having this. She injured her ankle. Nothing was making it better. This is an ankle injury, right? This is how crazy we're wired. She's been to doctors, specialists, physical therapists. We put the band around her waist, and the ankle feels entirely better. The pain goes from a 9 to a 0.
Yeah.
It was just so much fun. But what she needed, the sensory mismatch for her, was this, whatever was going on internally, needed some help, needed some attention. And when that got a little of activation, she felt better. So I love working with kids. Our brains, what's wonderful about kids is they're the most neuroplastic among us. If we need a brain to change, they have the perfect environment for that to occur.
I agree. They are fun. When I see them for any kind of emotional healing work, it's like one session and you're good for the next 5 years.
Right. Love that.
There's just not a lot of trauma there's lots of trauma that happens with kids, but it's very fast.
Yeah.
They haven't had 40 plus years to build like all these stories and belief systems and fears and things.
I also think that what you and I do in particular could be such a massive tool for kids who are bullied.
Yeah.
Because often kids who are bullied, they have subtle neurological challenges. Maybe they have eyes like mine. And so it's really hard to catch a ball, which it was for me in grade school. And those kids might be targeted. At least they might be the last to be picked on a team. But at worst, they may be targeted by a bully because they're weak.
Yeah.
And when you and I can come into that kid's life and say, you're not weak, you're not worse than another child, but there's some neurological challenges that we can work on and make you better. At the same time, I think we could educate schools to say, and the kids in schools to say, the kids you target as a bully, who may be picked on, they're not bad kids.
Right.
They don't have massive problems, and they're not weird. They may have some neurological setbacks.
Yeah. Yeah, just a few.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, how can people get in touch with you if they want to schedule and book? Do you see people online? So can people anywhere in the world work with you if they want to?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah.
So what's the best way?
The best way to find out more about me is at my website.
Okay.
That's mp3-theratrain. If you put the words therapy and training together, you might get something like TheraTrain. So it's mp3-theratrain.com.
Got it.
And they'll get all kinds of exposure to some of the basics here. I'm trying, one of the benefits, if I can put it that way, to COVID-19 is I've been able to really build out my content on that. So people can really get a good amount of awareness of what I'm about by looking at that side.
Amazing. Awesome. Okay. All right. Well, I've got some research to do on this waist trimmer band. Find the one that you're talking about so people can try it out. Yeah, that's very cool. I'd like to get some and just have them in the office in case they help support people. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time today. This was
Thank you.
great. I learned a
Jamie,
lot.
I've kept on thinking about one thing I wanted to say
Oh, yeah.
because I just owe you a big thanks. Probably 2 years into my journey, I called you
Yeah.
because I needed help.
Yes.
And you were a voice that was just super kind and compassionate. And I'm so grateful that you spoke to my life at that time. And I
Mm.
just really would be remiss if I didn't um, just say thank you in a very heartfelt way today. You reached out, you were so kind, you gave me advice, and you told me to keep going. So,
I'm so glad. I'm glad that I could help. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
yeah.
Okay. I'm going to stop the recording.
All right.
Bye, everyone. Till next time.